of us have faith, but it lacks patience. We give up. You start speaking life. Your faith becomes, where you're giving, you're tithing, you're saving. And then after about 6 months of doing that, you say, this stuff doesn't work. You've given up. Faith and patience are what inherit the promises. You start going on evangelism, loving on people, having rhythms with your disciples, and then you give up midway. You start a business, and then you give up after 2 years of running the business because you lost a big contract, or you entered a debt, or you made a big mistake, or someone cheated you. And then you say, business, I'm not meant for business. Let me go back to maybe full-time employment. And yet you know in your heart that there's a seed for business that God put on the inside of you. Or you're at a job, and then, you have a bad relationship with your boss, or they don't promote you at the time you feel you should have been promoted. And without God giving you a word to say your time here is over, you give before your season of reaping a harvest, and another comes in and they get promoted in 2 months in the job where you were supposed to wait 2 more months, and then they get your salary, which you should have got, which is 10 times what you're earning now, because you gave up, because it became too difficult. Listen, you don't give up when it becomes hard. The Bible says that if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Let's not be people who give up, but let's be people who wait for the season to end and we enter our next season. And there's a difference between entering your next season and giving up. You know it, that when you're entering your next season, it's because you know that your season has ended, and usually there is peace. In fact, it looks like you're thriving. And God is telling you, time up. When I left my job where I worked before I came to work in the church full time, it was a very good job at the time. I had wanted to quit before. There's a difference between quitting and entering your next season. And God refused. My husband refused. And then when God told me it was time, it felt like I just finally entered a good season, and God was like, now is the time. It wasn't out of anger, it wasn't out of frustration, it was out of instruction. You don't quit. Don't be a quitter. Don't. Stay. He says till the end. Till the end of the assignment. Till the end of your vows. Till the end of the ministry. Till the end of your responsibility. Stay till the end. Stay till the end. The end happens when God says the end has come. This is the end of this season. You will hear him. He will give you instruction. He will bring people to speak into your life. You will know. And usually it's not easy to move on because you're actually enjoying the season. When it ends and God shows you now it's time for the next thing, he has to convince you. Till the end, he says, don't become sluggish, but imitate. In other words, there are people, Apostle Moses taught a teaching, which you should go and look for. It's called the My Faith Company. He talked about people, that there are people who can actually kill your faith. But here they are encouraging us that you don't become sluggish, but you imitate those who through faith and patience. There are people you can imitate who don't give up. Hang around with people who don't give up. Don't be around quitters who are always giving up on everything. It gets difficult, they leave. If they have an argument, they quit the relationship. That's not the Spirit of God. God is patient with us. Through faith and patience. Faith is not enough. Faith and patience. You inherit the promises. We read Galatians 6:9. Don't get weary of doing good, for in due time you will reap. You shall reap if you don't give up. We know people who did not give up. People like Elisha. He didn't give up on following Elijah. It was difficult to follow Elijah. There was no clear definition of how long the following season would be. The test was staying till the end, through the uncertainties. Others were happy to learn from Elijah, but not to stick with him till the end. It is the one who stayed till the end that reaped a harvest. You know, there are tests that are going to come. Purpose is going to be tested. And let me read for you some people who stayed till the end, or whose faith was tested till the end. Someone like David, he was anointed to be king, but he entered the office about 13 years later, and he was tested. His assignment was to serve his father of destiny, who was Saul, King Saul, who was hunting him and wanting to kill him. And David had to fight against promoting himself before his due season. And he had to serve Saul till the end. There are people who you're serving who are difficult to serve. But that right there is your test. Can you serve this person till the end of the assignment? To serve them and then enter your next level or your real assignment. Because the serving of that person is probably your season of waiting until you enter your harvest of your true assignment. Can you serve that difficult person? Can you stay in that difficult marriage where maybe your life is not in danger, but it's just difficult? It feels like a stale marriage. Can you do what they tell you to do, to love them without them having to reciprocate? Because you see, in the season of waiting, it's who you're becoming. It's not necessarily what you're getting or it's who you're becoming. Will you stay till the end? Because at the end of your patience is your harvest. Oh yes. At the end of the waiting is the harvest. You will reap if you don't give up. David could have entered his assignment prematurely and it would not have ended well. But he knew that he had to stick till the end and honor this man till the end. For Ruth, it was sticking with Naomi, her mother-in-law, and seeing her as a mother to say, I will be covenanted to you whether there's nothing to gain from being with you till the end. But in her sticking with Naomi, who had nothing to offer, she ended up becoming the great-grandmother in the lineage of Jesus Christ. Jesus himself, he stuck with his assignment till the end. He said, Lord, if it's possible, take this assignment away, but not my will, but yours be done. It was difficult, but he stuck with it till the end. And that's why he has glory in heaven. Abraham, 25 years waiting on a promise that was given by God for a child. But he had to wait till the end and trust God when it looked impossible. It looked completely impossible. Some of you, it looks like the things God told you, will they ever come to pass? You're like, God, when? How long shall it be until I see the promise? And you feel like giving up. You feel like quitting. No, that's the devil trying to minister to you. Do not quit till the end. When the end comes, you will enter the harvest. Never quit your assignment out of frustration. The one who told you to begin will tell you when it's time to move into the next thing. And it's always, he's a minister of peace till the end. Let's talk about Noah, who had to build an ark for over 100 years. And he talked about water coming from the sky. Yet there had never been water coming from the sky before. Water used to come from the ground and just, plants would be nourished. But he was saying a flood is coming. People laughed at him. They probably said, look at that fool. How long has he said that same thing? There's probably a promise God gave you and you've talked about it. And now you've reached a point where you feel ashamed of talking about that promise because it looks like the exact opposite is happening in your life. It looks like the exact opposite is happening in your ministry. I'm here to say, do not give up. At the end of your faith and patience is the inheriting of the promises. And when an inheritance comes, everyone sees it. At the end of your waiting is your harvest. There is such a thing as a premature harvest. Do not give up. You will reap if you do not give up. You shall reap a harvest. The harvest is guaranteed by the God who we must have a full assurance of hope in. That this God I serve, he's the one who spoke. If he said it, it shall be. If he said it, it will stand. Stop doubting the things God said to you because you're going through a time of testing. Don't doubt it. Don't give up. Keep going. Keep going. Don't give up. I'm going to tell you a bit of our story. My husband and I got married. We were serving in the ministry as worship leaders. No big deal. And I was happy to serve there. My dream was to become very wealthy and support the work of ministry and also, help orphans and people who need help. I never saw myself as a pastor, ever, ever, ever. And the truth is that by the time God confirmed to me that I was a pastor, I was already a pastor. But it started with me obeying my spiritual father and pastoring because he told me to pastor. Just obeying. Obedience will lead you into places within the destiny that God has for you, if you trust the ones God has placed over you. So eventually in 2011, we start pastoring actively. Like in the church, actually became pastors in my early 20s. And then along the way, about 2013, God starts to speak to me about quitting my job. We were doing well work-wise. We were saving, making investments. We had now finally had a baby, trusting God. Lots of good things were happening. My husband had started a business. And so the idea was I stick with employment because the business was barely paying him anything. It was paying him in Uganda shillings, 800,000 a month, which would be the equivalent of maybe not even $300. Maybe $200, $250, about that a month. And the house we were living in was about that much. And so the work I was doing was bringing in a lot more money. It was what was helping to sustain many things in the home, fees, food, car insurance, fueling the car, many things. So our agreement as a partnership was, as the business grows, because before my husband was earning so much more and I was earning very little, and so that we're in a partnership. So now it was, hey, this is the wise thing to do, stick with the job until the business catches on. Then, because I really had wanted to quit and get into full-time ministry, then we can get into full-time ministry. But then God started to speak to us about quitting and leaving the job. And at the time, I was pregnant with our second baby. So if now we had to leave where we were living and downgrade to a smaller house in a not so good neighborhood. The rooms were so tiny. When you hosted 10 to 13 people, you had to get a fan in the living room because it was so hot, so hot. And then, you know, the bedrooms were so tiny. There were 2 little bedrooms. My husband used to joke that if someone put their hand through the window in our bedroom, they would touch our noses because you were so close to the window. Everything was so squashed. We had so much clutter. And we were pastors, and we were pastoring wealthy people, okay? You're there talking about God's kind of prosperity, and you feel like people are looking at you and saying, show us some of it, okay? You know, when you hooted at our gate, it's like you were hooting in our bedroom, because the gate was so close to the house, and there was no compound space. The kids, you know, you parked about 3 cars, and then the place was full. I'm describing to you our reality. And the rooms were so small that we had to use the garage, break a window through the garage, ask the landlord to allow us, reluctantly allowed, and then painted the gray walls with cartoons for the sake of the kids. But like the door was the usual metallic door that is supposed to be at a garage. And so at night you'd have to put like something against the door so that the cold is not too much. And the cement floor, of course, there were no tiles in there. We had this double-decker bed for the children. And we were so broke, you know, and yet God had given us a promise, I'll take care of you financially if you serve me. So we thought that means once I stop working, money is going to flood in, you know, but the word of God was the seed and it was going to be tested. I tell you something, I was one of those preachers who people knew my clothes, okay? They knew that once she has worn this dress, it's either the other one or this one. You had like a change of 6 clothes which you kept going through. And I had my people who were, I can't convert the money to, you know, other currency. I'll speak in Uganda shillings. But I had a lady who I used to buy from dresses. I started getting better buying 2 dresses a month at 25,000 a dress, you know, and some months I couldn't afford to buy, you know, like nail polish. Those were luxuries. So we'd go and buy nail polish of about 1,000 shillings. That's less than $1, 1,000 or 2,000 shillings. And, you know, paint our own nails, do our own money pedi. Of course, the paint was so cheap that it started, you know, bothering our nails or whatever. Eventually cut off the hair so that you don't have to spend on hair things. You know, we were really broke. I would go downtown Kampala and buy, you know, where they sell second-hand clothes, where you're buying blouses of 1,000 shillings, blouses of 1,500 or 2,000 shillings. That was the stuff we were. And meanwhile, you're leading, and then you're not driving. I was always on motorbikes, what we call borders in Uganda, the cheapest form of transport. And then you'd find me downtown carrying my big fat, you know, polythene bag full of things that I've just shopped. And you hope that no congregant finds you. You're sitting on your bike going home, and then on Sunday you have to go and try to dress as nice as you can and talk about God's goodness and talk about financial increase. And you see people are looking at you, people who have driven their big cars in, and some of them would meet me and not introduce me as their pastor because I think they were embarrassed. And even me, I was embarrassed. And sometimes I felt ashamed. I looked at my family and I could see the pity in their eyes, and some of them the pain of seeing how I'm living and how life is. And it's like, we know this girl is brilliant. We know what she could have been, but here she is. I would meet classmates. You know, I'm talking about the shame sometimes that coming with waiting on the promises of God. But we stuck with it. And meanwhile, we were tithers. We were givers. We were giving to Arise and Build. We were giving a lot of money. I remember one of my lowest moments was when our daughter was sent away from school for school fees. And we met some of our congregants outside as they were chasing us. My God. I asked myself, I was an orphan and I never lacked fees. How can my child lack fees? Because I chose to serve God. Is this the price I must pay? Will I become the poor pastors? I'm talking to someone who you've reached a point where some of you look at us and think, even with the little harvest we've entered, you think these people have always had it good. No, we've seen the pain of waiting And even now there are things I'm waiting on God for, promises he has given me, that I'm wondering, God, why did you tell me these things? I was okay. I didn't have these expectations. Now I'm wondering, will it really ever come to pass, God? How long must I wait? What does it mean? How about the pain of waiting? And I know that it will come to pass. When I start to wonder, God reminds me of the things I've entered. Guys, I'm telling you this testimony for you to know that God is faithful. If there's something where God has taken care of us, it's in the area of finances. We are not yet where we know we will be, but we are no longer struggling the way we used to struggle. I don't know when I last shopped clothes. People buy me clothes. Every week I'm getting clothes, bags, shoes. I have to keep giving away expensive things that are beautiful things. We lived in a beautiful home that we've never paid for 4 years now. With a couple who we love, they've become like family. We love them. They've loved us. They are like people sent from heaven. They are like unusual, abnormal people who have just decided to give us their home. We've lived in a beautiful home that has no shame attached to it, that has no debt attached to it. We are building our home debt-free, and we're going to enter it this year. A big, beautiful home, bigger than the one we are living in. Isn't there a God in heaven? You can't explain it. We can't explain our finances. We don't have some income streams that we can explain that we are business people and that's how we earn money. No, God sends us money. People come and give to our bosom. But we took on that ministry in 2013, full time. 10 years later, we are seeing a reward. Don't give up. And I know that we've not yet even entered the fullness of it. I know we are going to, I believe that I'm going to one day own a private jet. Why not? If it's available in God, why not? Yeah, why not? Our giving has continued to increase. Stay diligent. Give. Love people. Yes, the shame will come as you're waiting. I imagine Abraham and his shame as he called himself father of nations with no child. For 20 years, they thought he was a madman. As Noah built an ark for 100 years, and people started saying, stay away from that weird man. He's been building a boat saying water is coming from up for 100 years. What is it that God has told you to wait on him for, that you feel ashamed waiting? That you feel like, God, I don't think that was you. Maybe I came up with those things myself. Maybe God told you you'd have twins and you've waited for children for 7 years now. And you feel like, no, I don't think that was God. I think I came up with it myself. No, God is faithful. Have a full assurance of hope. You will reap a harvest if you don't give up. You will reap a harvest if you don't give up. You will reap a harvest if you don't give up. I want to close by reading for you 2 stories which Apostle Moses sent this morning on the pastors group about people who succeeded because they were patient. One is about the person who started KFC. You know, if you don't know KFC, I don't know. May you get to know it. But this is the story. It says how diligence created the world famous Kentucky Fried Chicken business. When Colonel Harland Sanders retired at the age of 65, he had little to show for himself except the Caddy Roadster, a $105 monthly pension check, and a recipe for chicken. 65 years. Knowing he couldn't live on his pension, he took his chicken recipe in hand, got behind the wheel of his van, and set out to make his fortune. His first plan was to sell his chicken recipe to restaurant owners, who would in turn give him a residual for every piece of chicken they sold, 5 cents per chicken. The first restaurateur he called on turned him down. So did the second, so did the third, so did the next 1,000. 1,000 no's. You're 65 years old. In fact, the first 1,008 sales calls Colonel Sanders made ended in rejection. Still, he continued to call on owners as he traveled across the USA, sleeping in his car to save money. And then prospect number 1,009 people gave him his first yes. Wow. How many churches have you planted before you give up on church planting? How many disciples have you made before you give up on saying, I'm not a disciple maker, because your first 2 missional communities closed with 3.5 members? How many songs have you written before you give up on being a songwriter? How many businesses have you started before you give up on being, how long has your business run before you've given up? How long have you been in that marriage before you can give up? How long have you waited for that baby before you can give up? How long have you waited? 1,009 calls later, he said he got a yes. Here you may understand the definition of diligence. It is the persistent and relentless effort by an individual to solve a problem. It is the relentless, persistent and relentless effort by an individual to solve a problem, to overcome difficulties, and to accomplish great things. After 2 years of making daily sales, he had signed up a total of 5 restaurants. Still, the Colonel pressed on, knowing that he had a great chicken recipe and that someday the idea would catch on. Of course, you know how the story ends. The idea caught on, and by 1963, the Colonel had 600 restaurants across the country selling his secret recipe of Kentucky Fried Chicken. And in 1964, he was bought out by a future Kentucky Governor John Brown, and even though the sale made him a multimillionaire, he continued to represent and promote KFC. How long have you waited? Do you think you're too old to start again? Do you think you're too young? Do you think you're too broken? Do you think you've already had enough troubles? Do not give up. If you don't give up, you will see the harvest. Let me read for you another story. The diligence of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, a famous president of the USA, is another good example of an inexorable, never give up, never give in man of diligence. In spite of repeated failure and difficulties, he persisted in his political mission until he was successful. Notice how his numerous defeats did not deter him. He persisted, and his relentless efforts paid off in the end. He failed in business in 1831. He was defeated for legislature in 1832. He experienced a second failure in business in 1833. He suffered a nervous breakdown in 1836. He was defeated for speaker in 1838. He was defeated for elector in 1840. He was defeated for Congress in 1843. He was defeated for Congress again in 1848. He was defeated for Senate in 1855. He was defeated for Vice President in 1856. He was defeated for Senate in 1858. He was finally elected president in 1860. Let's calculate when he first started trying out. 1831 to 1860. 29 years of failure, defeat. What would you be thinking about that person? Every time you're like, why can't this one just stop and live a normal life? That's what some people are telling you. Why don't you just give up on that thing? You've tried enough, but you know God gave you a word. You know what is written in his word for you. And you're saying, I don't know, but somehow in my heart, I know that I had God. I know that it doesn't make sense because you're the one who has failed in business. You're the one whose marriage seems to go in and out. You get good seasons, you go back into very bad ones. You're like, did God really talk to me about this man? Did God really talk to me about this woman? Did God really tell me to start this mission or community? Did God really send me to plant this church? Did God really say? That's what the devil said to Adam and Eve. Did God really say? He wants you to doubt what you heard from the Lord. This man eventually became president. Perhaps you now understand when I talk about faith and patience inheriting the promises. I told you that I would tell you about premature harvest. You have to know when it's not your time to enter something. When you're dating, it's not time to have sex and get pregnant. It's not time to live together. The cohabiting spirit wants the fruit without the commitment. There is such a thing as a premature harvest. And let me just give you an example that will help you understand that, a natural example. You know when a woman gets pregnant, what if she really feels like she wants a baby when she's 3 months pregnant? When that baby comes out, will they survive? When they come out at 5 months, they might survive, but with difficulty and a lot of labor. You have to know when it's not your time to enter a harvest. When you go and harvest corn or a crop from the field before it's time, it can't be eaten. It becomes useless. Don't get impatient. That's why they call it abortion or a miscarriage. It's called an abortion or a miscarriage when the harvest comes before its time. There is such a time as due season.